This is how I went from a 23:43 5k to a 16:57 5k in under 9 months. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure to like and subscribe for 5 years of good luck. Only 28% of you are subscribed. You can always unsubscribe later if you change your mind. Wait, hold your horses, mate. Before we carry on, I have to get into a few disclaimers first. I have good genetics, I'm tall, pretty strong, and have good natural raw speed. I was also 15/16 at the time, so I was a growing teenage boy. I'd done some running in the past, so I had a bit of experience. And I had some decent gear. I had a Forerunner 35, pretty outdated but it did the job, and I had a decent supply of running shoes. It was early on a Saturday morning, the 9th of October 2021 to be exact. The birds were chirping, sun was shining, wind was blowing. I woke up, still very tired, and was deciding what to do. A park run, I thought, so I went to my local park and I began the run. All was going fine. 1k done, 2k done, 3k done, then on the last kilometre I got a stitch. Everyone was overtaking me. It was so painful. I was going so slowly, but yet I had so much left in my legs. I couldn't let this be. The official time was 23:43. I had finished the park run, but I was not satisfied. A few days later, I built up the courage to go on a midweek run. The following weekend, out of the blue, I smashed my time by over 3 minutes, running 20:41. The next week I went on a couple runs, then on Saturday, at parkrun, out of nowhere, I broke 20 minutes for the first time, running 19:55. This was big. It was my first full month of running. I ran over 200k in the month, averaging about 50k per week. My running was spontaneous, short one here, long one there, but what I did start doing was sessions. I started with grass interval sessions, then soon after I was doing track sessions. Now at the start I felt so uncoordinated, I was not used to running fast. But what was key about November is I started breaking through many barriers that were essential for my longevity of my running career. I ran my second half marathon. I did one a few years ago. I was doing sessions where I'd run there, which was 4.5k, do the session, and then run back, which was another 4.5k. First I'm doing the session running there and back, and the half marathon. I was in famine when I got back, completely dehydrated, face was numb, in a terrible state, but that was so important to push myself through the barrier, shocking myself now, so I would end up toughening up in the future. They say don't jump in and ease into it, but I don't think it's a bad thing just to suddenly do something super hard like a half marathon so everything else feels easier. Think about how easy a 10k would feel once you've done a half marathon. With these new interval sessions in my legs, I went to a flat park run and ended up running 18:59. After a month of solid progress, as you'd expect, I plateaued. December was quite mentally tough. After a time of decent progress, when it stops it can get quite rough. But months like this happens to everyone. You don't get progress as you'd like, but you just gotta train through them and keep on persevering. Not much changed this month. My mileage was just a little bit worse than November. I began to start thinking about strength and conditioning work, which is key for any runner's career. The fastest 5k I ran this month was 19:36, which was on Christmas Day. This wasn't as fast as I'd liked, but I kinda settled into 19-minute 5ks. But this would set me up for next month, which was the biggest month yet. The year started off alright. I got a PB of 19:20 on my local park run, which is a hilly course. However, I started getting a really dodgy calf. I was limping for a couple of weeks and I literally couldn't jump on the leg with my dodgy calf. Reluctantly, I signed up for this perfectly flat 5-mile race where I'd wear these new shoes, Zoomfly 4s, which I'd gotten for Christmas. There I was on the start line with a dodgy calf, but little did I know that this race changed everything. Race began in 3, 2, 1, and I was off. I went through the first K in 3:30, I thought I started way too quick. Second K, 3:30 again. Third K in 3:30. At this point, I stopped looking at my watch, I just ran, and I ran, and I ran. 29:26. Not only had I destroyed my 5k PB in an 8k race by over 1 minute running 17:56 for the first 5k, I also was ranked the first under 17 in the UK for the 5 mile distance this year. Every high has an equal low. What comes up must come down, and let me tell you, it certainly did. I had a county schools cross-country race next week, and with that new massive PB I came into the race way too confident. I thought I was that guy, but let me tell you, I got humbled. Because it was early on a January morning, it was really icy on the grass, and because I'm really smart, for some reason I decided to wear road shoes. Every step I was slipping and sliding, it felt like I was moving backwards. My legs reached a lactic wall so quickly after about a K, and it was a 5k race. It was horrible, it was a nightmare, the toughest race, the worst race of my life. Just look at the splits, L pacing there. But I'm certain that this race was very important for the progression of my running. I'm not invincible, and I need to stay modest. February was the month that I really started to get the miles in. I started running over 70k a week and I got into a really consistent rhythm. My weekly training would consist of Monday strength and conditioning, Tuesday a session, Wednesday a recovery run, Thursday a session, Friday a day off, Saturday a park run and Sunday a long run. And this would amass to 70k. This month I've really worked down on my local hilly park runs time. From my previous PB last month of 1920, I made a massive jump to 18:41. Next week I ran 18:47, a little bit slower. Then the next week after that I ran 18:14. A flat course will be about 45-50 seconds faster, so this was really promising. March was my highest mileage month of this video with 324 kilometers done. I was just putting the miles in, trying to beat that 17:56 5k that I ran at the start of the 5 mile race back in January. Still bugging me out that I hadn't beaten that time despite it being 3 months later. The start of the month was a continuation of my PB streak at my local park run. With an incredible effort I managed to run 17:59 right to the wire, just under 18 minutes. Which on a flat course would have been about mid-low 17 minutes. Unfortunately, but as expected, this short burst of progress was short-lived. The following Saturday I did the park run. Without eating enough, I completely faded and ended up running 19:03, which is over a minute slower than last week. My confidence had been completely knocked. I kept my spirits high and next week I went to a flat park run attempting a PB. I managed to get a PB of 17:52, which was an age category record at the park run. I wasn't satisfied though, I didn't run great and I knew I had so much more left in me. See, I kind of went back the next week and ran awfully, running 18:40. Let's not talk about that. But what we should talk about is how consistent my mileage was. The mileage was solid in April, averaging over 70 kilometers a week. After that sub 18 on the hilly course, I knew that my PB of 17:52 wouldn't last, for I had a fast 5k race coming up. I'd recently been performing incredibly well in my track sessions. My splits were actually crazy. You could not tell my 5k PB was high 17 with the splits that I was running. With all this speed in my legs, I headed into this 5k race with way too much confidence, expecting to break 17. I was really nervous. I'd invested too much emotionally into this race, and this reflected in my terrible pacing, which is a perfect example of how not to pace a 5k. I began the race. The first kilometer was downhill, and with adrenaline rushing, I did the first k way too fast in 3:05. Now that's 15:25 5k pace, which is way too quick. After 3 kilometers I completely died, running 3:42, then 3:37 for my 4th and 5th kilometer. My finishing time was 17:36, which was very disappointing since I at least wanted to break 17:30. Just look at my awful pacing. This really put into perspective how hard sub 17 was. It was so much harder than I thought. This was not going to be easy. This was not. After a big race, you're always left feeling empty. What next? This month I decided to shift my focus towards the 1500 meters, so I was working on my speed a lot, as you can see by the sessions on the screen. 4:34 was what I debuted in the 1500. Another disappointing race. I was aiming for 4:20. Whatever comes down must come up. The end of the month I began to taper for a race that made history. From the 1,945 kilometers I'd run in these months, I did it. I finally did it. 16:57. It was a beautiful day, a beautiful race, a beautiful journey. The point of this video is that you can achieve much more than you think you ever could have done, but you have to make sacrifices. Success requires sacrifice. Every year you're writing a chapter of your own story. Every month is a page. Every day is a line. Make the next sentence count, because why not?